Yeah, hello there and welcome back, and let us continue with our lesson over here. And in the previous lesson we saw there was an error which was saying that no provider scope was found. So in this lesson we are going to see how we can fix it, and we'll be using a provider scope. And let us go and get started with it. So if I go to this particular function which says login screen test with an email and password, validation success. So when the validation is success, we don't want to see all of this text that we have. Email is empty, password is empty, and the password is invalid, and the email is invalid. So what it's actually doing is, if you go to this particular screen over here, which is a login screen, and let me open up in this side over there, and let me make it a little bit bigger over here. And if you go over here, when we are actually pressing that particular tab button, so which means that we are clicking on that particular button over here, and that is this particular button, and when we click on it, it's going to call the login function. And this function or the method over here is validating the form, and if it is valid, then we are going to call some function in our controller. So this is the Riverpod function, which is of the ref object. So what we need is a provider scope for this one to work correctly. And for that, let's go to our project over here, and let me make it bigger, and let us wrap this material app. I'll just remove the cons from here, and let us wrap this one with the widget over here, and I will wrap it with the provider scope. Right, so provider scope over here, and let's just call this one as the const. And with this scope we have an option to override, and we need to override some of the controller over here. And for that, what you need to do is, if you go to the controller, so let's go to the our login screen over here, and we have the auth controller. So this is actually calling the, if you see, this function is actually calling the auth controller, which is on the login function. So if I go over there, auth controller, and in the auth controller, that is actually calling this particular function. So we need to actually mock this controller, so which means that we need to create a mock object for this auth controller, so we can override it over here. So what we can do is, if I go over here and say auth, and that should be of auth controller provider dot, I have option to override with the provider. So I need to create a mock object for this controller and then pass in over here. So how I can create that one is, let's go on to the top over here, and here let's create the final variable. Sorry, not the final, it should be of a final, and let's call this one as a mock auth controller, and that should be of equals to the we need to get the provider over here, so we need the override. So here we need the auto dispose state notifier provider. So if I go to my auth controller over here, so it is actually requesting for this particular object. So what I can do is, I can just copy the I guess the whole thing from here. Let us copy all of this, and then I'll just go over here and replace this one from there, and let me arrange this one properly, and let me make it a little bit bigger. So what we need is, let me call this one first mock object, so mock the auth controller provider, and then once I have that, let me just make it a little bit bigger. So let me import this particular state first of all, and then I don't need to have this call over here. I need to mock this particular service too, because we don't want to have a real object over here. Whenever we are testing, we always depend on the fake object or the mock object. So we will be creating another mock for this auth service provider. So let me remove this one from here, and once we have removed this one from here, what we need is we need another object for this one. So let's go and pass this one actually over here for now. And what we need is we need to have this particular auth service. So if you go over here, it requires if you go to the auth controller, the requirement for this is to pass in the iAuth service. So if you go over here, and in the constructor, you can see it has a dependency of the auth service, which is the iAuth service. So we need to create a mock object for this one too, because it is going to call that using that iAuth service. It is going to log in. So we don't want to go and do the actual logging. We want to just mock the object and just create our stuff over here. So let's go back over here and onto the top. I need to mock it, right? So how do I create a mock object? So that is the another thing. So what we will do is I'll go to my dependency over here, pubspec.yaml file, and I have the dependency of the Mockito as well as the mocktail. You can either use a Mockito or the mocktail. It depends on you. If you are familiar with the mocktail, that's okay, and if you are familiar with the Mockito, so both of them are good enough to use it with. So we just need to create a mock object. So add that to your particular dependency over here, and you are good to go. Once you have added this particular dependency, we can just go over here and use it to create a mock object. So I will say a generate. This will be from the Mockito. So generate nice mocks, which is coming from the Mockito. You see, this is a Mockito, and here it will take a list of the mock spec object, and I need to pass in the type over here. So the type will be of a iAuth service. So this is the object that is required over here as a dependency. If you see, it's passing into the constructor. We don't have to create the mock object for the state over here, because state is later we are going to verify whether we have the actual state or not. So we don't want to create a mock object. We just want to create a mock object for our auth service. So once we have this using the Mockito, and if you are using the mocktail, and I will go and extend it with the mock, which comes from the mocktail. So you should import that one with the mocktail, and then it should implement that particular class. So if I want to implement, I have to implement this particular class over here, and that's it. So I guess I need to import this particular over here, and that should be fine. So I guess it should be the same way that we are doing currently over here, and this should not be of a mock object, it should be of a real object over here, and that should be fine. So if you are using the mocktail, you can do in this way, and if you are using the Mockito, you need to generate in this way. So I'll be using the Mockito, and let me just clear it out for this one. And once you use a Mockito, you have to generate a code, and if you are using the mocktail, you don't have to use a code generator tool. But once I'm using the Mockito, I need to generate some code over here. So let me run some command over here, which is to create the run the build runner to generate our code over here. So let me hit enter over here, and that should run the code generator or the build runner for us to generate the code, and you should see one of the class generated over here. So let us wait and see if it can generate a new class for us over here. And yeah, you can see it has generated the login screen test.the class. So once we are done with that one, we are good. So let's go over here, and what I will do is I'll create a let variable, and that should be of the iAuth service, and using that IOT service, I'll create a mock of the IOT service. And let's create the setup, which is the life cycle of the this is a life cycle function or the method from the test, which if you use a setup, this is going to run on each of our test cases. So if you have one test case over here, here is another test, and here is another test. So currently we have a 3 tests actually over here. So using these 3 tests, it will actually go and call this particular function. So this is like every time whenever your test is running, it's going to call this particular setup function. So here we can set up some of the logic. So every time the test is created, I want to create a new instance of this particular object, because if you use the same object within the multiple tests, then you may get into some error or state error, or some object maybe that your test case may probably fail. So it is a good practice to have a new object created every time you run the test case over here. So let me go and say this is of the mock IOT service. So here you can see it has generated the new class for us. So let us import that one that is coming from this particular class. So once we have that particular mock object of our IOT service, this is the IOT service, and now we have the mock object generated already. So let's go to our test. So I guess this is the test case. So here I will pass in the the mock IOT service, which means now our auth controller is ready. And this controller we have passed in the mock IOT service. So which means that whenever the controller is going to call the login function, it is going to make use of this particular mock object. So if you go to this controller now we have to call this login function, and when this login function is called, we don't want to do the actual login. So what we need to do is we need to test only using a fake object. Like, we don't want to actually call to the real API over here. We want to just mock the object and do something like stubbing, right? Let's say when you are going to log in, just return me some value from here. So you're just trying to stub it, and when the user is trying to log in, you just say, okay, just return me this particular value from this particular login. So it's actually returning the some value. You can say it's going to return you the result set of the either failure or the boolean. So we just want to stimulate this particular thing over here. So let's go back to our test case over here. At the top over here, what I will say is when this is coming from the Mockito package. If you see, it's coming from the Mockito, and I will say that when this particular mock auth service dot is, if it is going to log in, so we are going to call that particular login function because we hit the login button. So when we are going to log in, I need to pass in the login request. So for that login request, what I will do is I'll just go and provide the there is a test data, so I'll just use the test data from here, and this is of the login request. So I'll just grab this one and just paste it over here. So I'm going to use that one from here and just import it from here. That should be fine. And once I call this function, the second option is what I want to do when this function is called. So when this function is called, what I want to do is I want to go and let me close this one, and then I should have closed this one too. Dot, I guess we haven't imported this particular package, so let me import this particular package. And I guess previously we imported somewhere here. I guess we didn't import it previously, so it should be fine. So once I have imported that package, I should get an option to have a then. So you can see here is a 3 option, which is of then answer, then return, and then throw. So we will be using a then answer from here because it is the type of the future. So if you see this login is returning a future type, so we must make use of the then answer from here. So this real invocation is not required, so we can just remove, and this is of the asynchronous call, so I'll just make it as a async over here, and this is not what I want, so I just can remove from here. And now the return type I need to return from here, either a result set of the failure or the boolean. So since we want to simulate that this login is successful, we have to return it from here the true. So let me return a true value from here, which is will be of a success type of the true. Let me set it as a true over here, and let's just set it as a const over here. That should be good enough. So if I go to this auth controller, you can see that when you log in, it is the asynchronous function, right, and call, and you see that the return type is of bool. So what we are actually doing over here is I'm saying that when this particular auth service.login function is called, then just go and return this particular value, which is of a success type of the true. So that is what we are going to stimulate over here. So when login is when this particular auth service.login function is called, then just return me the boolean value, so which is of this one. So the your login is the type of the result set, so that's why we have to return from here success is from the result set. So it's coming from the multiple result set, and we just say that return me the true. So that should be the good enough for us. And what you can do is, I guess this should be all. We need to arrange it properly. So let me arrange the intent over here, and I guess that should be good enough. And let me see, yeah, so it has a proper intent, and let me run this test case for now, and I hope that should pass somehow. Let us wait and see if we are going to get a green check mark over here, or I'm not sure. So okay, so we are getting an error again. So you can see if you close this function, and if I go to the debug console, I should get a better view of that particular error. So let me close this one, and if I go on to the top, you can see that the following function, which is the fake used error, and it's going to call this particular login. No stub was found with the matching argument. So which means that we are stubbing over here. So this is the stub that we have created. This is the stub which we are going to actually fake a login call over here, and when this particular function is called, we are passing this login request with this particular email and the password, but it says that the stub was found method argument with the method call, so it doesn't find this particular matching call with this parameter with the login request. So it may be the error in our form submit. Maybe you are submitting a different so it is actually getting it from here, but then here we are passing a different object which is of a login request. So let's go to the login request on here, and we are passing in the different object, so that's why it's not matching, because the object that we are passing in and then the form submit one, the data is not the same, so that is giving us the error. So what I will do is I'll just make it as a same, so it should be of a same object, otherwise we will get an error. So we have a demo, this is the one. So what I will do actually is just keep it the demo1@gmail.com and the password as 123456 and abc. So if I go to the test case over here, and now what I can do over here is I'll just grab this and fill in the form using this information, so we get the same object. Here I'll just call the email, and here I'll just pass in the password from here. So that should do the trick for us. And let's now try to run the test case one more time, and let's wait for it to complete. And now, yeah, you can see that we have got a green check mark over here, and that should be, I guess, the test cases that we actually want to test it. And let's go and arrange the intent for this test 1 2. So let me grab all of this and let me arrange it properly, and that should be good enough. So now you can just run the all of the test cases from here. So select your particular group from here, and then you can just run it. So it should run all of the test cases for you. So just wait for that test to complete. You can actually go to this testing tab over here and just select it, and you will see that which of the test cases are running from here. And you can see that all of these test function that we have is getting the green check mark. So we are actually testing login, this particular login screen test over here. So let me just drag it, this one. So this is the one. It has a 3 test cases. So we have 1 2 and the 3 test cases over here, and that is what it's saying. So all of the 3 test cases just passed. Login screen with the password validator error, login screen test with email and password validation success, and login screen icon test. So all of these 3 test cases passed. So that's great, right? So you can also run the test case directly from the terminal. So if you want to run it, you can just go and let me clear out this one, and you can just say Flutter test, and that's going to run all of the test cases that we have. And here you go, it says that all of the tests have successfully passed. We can see +3, which means that it ran all of the 3 test cases, and you can see +3 on the green mark over there. And if you have a multiple tests over here, so if you want to just run one test case using the terminal or the CLI command, you can just run the Flutter test and just grab the path from here. So copy the relative path and just paste it over here and just hit enter. So this should run just the test file that you pass in. So if you just run the Flutter test, it's going to run all of the test cases over here. But if you can also pass in the single file over here. So you can see all of the 3 test cases that we have has successfully passed. So I guess that's all for this lesson, and I hope you learned something new over here, and I hope you enjoyed it. So on the next lecture, what we are going to do is we are going to create a new test case for our we are going to write a new test for our registration screen over here. So till then, have a great day.